Everybody, welcome to another edition of Seconds Out Live. Great to see you all in the chat talking and getting ready for another episode. The keen observers amongst you in the chat as you've been talking, looking down at your keyboards and your mobile phones, you'll have looked up and you'll have seen myself, a familiar face on Seconds Out Live. You'll know that Vinny's in the background as well too, giving a kiss to the broadcast, working out all the machinations in the back. And then you'll see a fresh face too, in the form of Josh, but not Josh Green, not Danny Flexen, who's usually here too. It's Josh Hart, who's been brought over to Seconds Out now and starting his fledgling career after a good start with his own channel. Josh, great to see you. Good to have you on your debut episode of Seconds Out Live. How's life?
I'm very, very good, Ayman. Very excited to be starting with Seconds Out. Obviously, I've been working with Seconds Out for about a week now, but I'm very good, very excited. How are you doing? How are you, Ayman?
Yeah, no, I'm really good to see your career unfold before my very eyes. I've been keeping a keen eye on you with what you've been doing. So good to have you on here. And I've heard that you've actually had some experience where, sometimes they say that, if you want to have an opinion on boxing, you've got to actually get in the ring and throw a few fists. You've been doing that as well too, haven't you?
Yeah, about 2.5 weeks ago now, just over 2 weeks ago, I stepped in the ring, did a white collar fight. Controversial scorecards let me down. I thought I boxed a great fight. Not so sweet boxing, but I thought I did enough. Obviously, they say you've got to win to get one of these, but that was a lie because I drew and I've still walked away with one. So, but no, it was a very good experience, very grueling, a lot tougher than what you'd actually expect. It was actually that bad. I got back to the dressing room after just 3 rounds of boxing and I actually threw up. So, if that doesn't tell you that the sport's hard enough, then I don't know what does. But it gives me that further respect for the fighters who do this, especially people like Journeyman who do it week in, week out. But yeah, it was very tough, but I'll definitely go again because I'm not trying to finish my career in the ring on a draw personally. That's not for me.
Good to see it. It's almost like I said to Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley as well. It's congratulations and commiserations because you didn't quite lose, but you didn't quite win. But hopefully you go the next step with the mentorship as well too, myself and others as well, and the people in the chat too supporting you. Maybe they'll come to your fight as well in the future. And instead of one of those fight posters in the past, I think I can see Fury versus Wild in the back and Josh Usyk. Maybe we'll have a Josh Hart fight poster as well too. And I know that. Look. Some reporters and things don't like to throw hands. I know a few of them do as well, but I'm pretty sure you're better than the likes of the middling card of the Danny Gilfillian and the Lewis Hart. They aren't too great. They're kind of on the up, but kind of slow progress with them, and you're kind of up there. So that's what I think as well. Anyway, joining Seconds Out. So looking forward to a good future for you, and looking forward to a good episode of Seconds Out Live. And let's go straight up into the main topic of contention. That is Anthony Joshua and his latest conversations. At least what it seems to be from, I believe it was Jonathan Ross. The quotes were going out before this was aired on TV, and AJ's kind of, I think, before put timelines on his career in the past. But in the heavyweight division, when the stakes are at their highest, when you're throwing the biggest punches and you're receiving the biggest back at you, you can be forgiven for wanting to exit the ring maybe a little bit sooner than others in the division might do, or other divisions more so. Especially as well, though, when the heavyweights seem to go on a lot longer, at least historically, heavyweights seem to have more life in them, or at least want to kind of milk the top end of the money in the boxing game. But Joshua seems to have put now a 2-year timeline as to how long he's going to stay in boxing for. When I spoke to Eddie Hearn, he said that's about right, really. That's about 6 fights. Well, if it's the metric of he's having 3 fights per year now, as he is seeming to, when beforehand maybe had 1 or 2 fights, that might be 6 fights we can look forward to. But depending on what Joshua wants to do, those could be less. And with a climb back, because he seems to be resurging to the top with recent wins over the likes of Ngannou and Otto Wallin, Jermaine Franklin, though he started Hellenius, which is another hellacious knockout. Joshua seems to have a lot more life than maybe 2 years kind of seems to be the case. So I wanted to get your thoughts in the chat if you haven't already. Put your comments down as to think what you think about Anthony Joshua's future, where you feel like that 2-year timeline is right, and what fights you want to see. Currently, there is a poll in the chat of the fights you'd most like to see Joshua in, including one with Tyson Fury, a trilogy with Oleksandr Usyk, a rematch again, it would be another trilogy, and a Ruiz, or another fight. But Josh, coming to you first of all in your debut thoughts as well too. What do you think about this timeline of Anthony Joshua? Do you feel that if he was to retire in 2 years, he maybe be leaving something on the table?
I think it depends. It depends on what we see over these next 2 years, because AJ seems to be in probably the best run of form he's been on in a very, very long time. He's keeping active. He's got better with every fight. When we look at the Franklin fight to the performance against Ngannou, you can see that he's starting to find that confidence in himself. He seemed a little bit gun shy in the Franklin fight, gun shy in the other ones. But as he's come through, I think the real fight that's shown that he had this confidence and the killer backing him was the Otto Wallin fight. I think if he wins a world title again, I don't think we'll see 6 fights in 2 years, because I think that's one of the biggest things that can not kill off a career, but kill off activity, is when you hold a world title, because it's not like AJ can just go and say, I want to fight this guy, I want to fight this guy. You've got to see what the governing bodies are saying, what the commissions are saying. But I think, obviously, I know the plan is to win another world title. If he goes undisputed and gets the undisputed fight against the winner of Fury Usyk, then I highly doubt we'll see the 6 fights. But on the whole, I think he could go on past 37, because he still seems to be in great shape. He's a proper professional. He lives the life. He's always in the gym. I think he could go on a lot long, not a lot longer than 37, but when you think only 2 years left, 2 years isn't a great amount of time. Then again, AJ has been in the sport for a long time, though. I think by 37, he would have been in the sport for 19, 20 years, probably just shy of 20 years. But ultimately, it all just comes down to how his body's holding up. Obviously, there's all the talks of him maybe not being able to take a punch. But again, you just got to wait and see. I don't believe we'll see 6 fights in 2 years, because this year, if he fights, let's say, September, and wins a world title in his next fight, because that's what Eddie Hearn's been saying. He's been saying the world title was next for AJ. If we see him win the world title in September, I think it'll only be the 2 fights this year. I don't think we'll see him fight in November or December, especially if he fights a worthy opponent like a Hrgovic or even the Fury Usyk winner. I don't think we'll see a 3rd fight this year. And I think we'd probably see him again about March, April next year. So we're not sure. But on the whole, I do think he'll go on longer than 37, but I don't think we'll see these 6 fights in 2 years, no.
Yeah, so it's quite interesting, because some of the cynical, or maybe, that kind of cynic point of view will kind of say that with some of the recent fights he's had, sure, he's been bouncing back and looking to resurge back from the losses to Oleksandr Usyk, which were quite damaging for him, especially with the way he handled the Usyk loss the second time around in Jeddah. I was there ringside. Remember when he grabbed that mic? But we'll talk more about that later on in the episode. But yeah, the bounces back from there. Jermaine Franklin was a tough fight. He's probably given him his toughest test since that fight. Then back to Helenius, which was supposed to be Dillian White, wasn't it? But White had to drop out for his own reasons. White now coming back into contention. Maybe they'll look to pursue a White fight in the future. Otto Wallin was someone he spent numerous rounds with, and he had kind of a blueprint from that, and as well had now moved over to Ben Davison as well, full time, it seems, and then to Francis Ngannou, who gave Fury an incredible fight, knocked down Fury as well too, as we'll famously remember throughout the years. That will grow and grow, that legacy, and that moment will do. But not really a seasoned pro in the form of Francis Ngannou, at least not in the boxing ring, more so in the MMA ring. So for a lot of people, contention, and whilst that works for him right now, maybe that's one eye as to being that foot out of the game in that sort of sense, because they don't want to take damage or any further damage where they can manage this point across all of boxing, maybe just outshined slightly by Fury in the heavyweight division, but depends what metric you're looking at. In a commercial sense, probably would be Joshua, who kind of leads that way with all the sponsorship deals and such, which we won't go into now. But it feels like, from a point of view where you can see this timeline being more cemented in that point of view, that there wouldn't be 2 years left, because they're looking to manage these moments, whether it's 3 fights this year, 3 fights last year. Look at the opponents that's he's up in against, and with the fact as well too that it seems to be right now, it's not going to be AJ contesting for the belt straight away, even though even though Hearn seems to say that's the case. The whispers right now are that Hrgovic and Dubois are going to contest, and then the winner will then fight AJ. Why is it not AJ fighting Hrgovic straight away? That's what kind of confuses me. So that's what kind of adds credence to me as to why there might be this timeline up on AJ. But I think there is the likelihood of leaving quite a bit on the table for the 34-year-old now, who would be 36 coming out of it. Not really miles out of his prime by any means. But like you said, there are a lot of miles on the clock, maybe, for having been in boxing for a long time. But I want to talk about some of the fights that we want to see Joshua in. If you could pick one fight in these 6 fights to make, Josh, what fight would you want to see?
It's got to be the obvious one, Fury versus Joshua. I'm not going to try and make myself sound like Eddie Hearn or Frank Warren here, but it is the biggest fight in the sport, I think, especially in British boxing. It's a fight that we were so close to getting a couple of years ago. And it's just that there's always been that argument of who's the best heavyweight. Is it Fury or is it AJ? And I think that the only way to find out is for them to fight. I think it's a fight that sells out Wembley with ease. At this current time, you'd probably see the fight land in Saudi, which it's not ideal, but I think we're at the stage where we know that both Fury or AJ don't have long left, and we just want to see the fight. So if I was to pick any fight in these next 6 fights, it would be Fury AJ without a doubt.
Let's go to some of the comments in the chat. Going by some of these comments, let me just remove this out of the way. We got See Ya from Brackets the Policeman. Good to see you. Demond Hickman says, I can respect it. AJ brought back boxing, him and Wilder. That's why I'm mad that they never fought each other. Shake my head. That's another option as well, too. We've got option for being another. Maybe it should be cemented as Wilder. I know that, of course, as well. White has umbrage to the defeat that he suffered as well in the pros, had got one win over AJ in the amateurs, but that's a big fight that we've been missing out on. If we get Fury, we don't get Wilder, and that was the big 2 fights at the time. And I know that Fury was out of the picture for a while, being out of shape and dealing with his own issues, but for a long time Joshua and Wilder was the fight, and that might be one that falls by the wayside if the 6-fight plan or this 2-year plan is to be adhered by. The truth, let's hear some truth from the truth. I think AJ also needs to rest. All the criticism from pundits, fans in the media, doing interviews, fights not being made because of either party is not wanting it to sign because of money disputes and so on. I get the point about the rest, and I get the point about criticism from pundits. Sometimes the criticism is warranted. Sometimes it's natural for it to happen, but it does feel like whatever anti-Joshua does, someone is on something or someone is on the other side of the fence when it comes to whatever comment he makes. And I feel like sometimes that is very unfair. I know that I'm kind of being broad and quite vague with that answer, but I do feel that at moments, certain times with AJ's career, he's kind of being unfairly heaped upon as well. Johnny the boy, come on, what BS is this? Just try push the Tyson fight closer. They know Usyk and Tyson have a 2-fight deal and chuck the mandatory in the mix. It's going to be around 2 years before they fight. Maybe that's the 2-year time plan ending with the winner of that fight. Got some emojis here. Thank you for the emojis, Ali. Jay Gibson, hello, it's me. Hello, Jay. Good to see you. Tony Lyons. When he retired, people then respect everything he's done, and the fights he tried to make and other heavyweights will be disappointed because when AJ leaves, the big money will leave with Team AJ. Josh, just coming back to you. Do you feel like AJ's got the credit and respect right now that he deserves in the sport?
I would say now he is. Yeah, I'd say when you look at in 2023, you'd say no, but I think after the brutal knockout that he got over Francis Ngannou, I think he started to get that respect back. I think he started to get the credibility back. I think people are starting to realise how crucial AJ has been to British boxing. Obviously, especially when you see how Fury dealt with Ngannou. Now, I'm not saying by any means that was a peak Fury that we saw. It really wasn't. We know that was probably the worst Fury we could have seen that night. But I think AJ's definitely getting that respect now. I think he's definitely being treated like one of the world's best fighters. Not one of the world's best fighters, one of the world's best heavyweights, which is what he is. He is up there, top 5, top 3. He's one of the best heavyweights in the world. And when you looked at the amount of disrespect he was getting last year, you wouldn't have thought that. But he's definitely getting that now, and it's good to see as well because before he lost the belts and everything, AJ was constantly bringing big nights to the UK, headlining stadiums, delivering great knockouts, delivering great fights, and always doing what the fans want, which was we want to be entertained. We go to a night of boxing to be entertained, and AJ would do that every time, and we didn't quite see that last year. The Franklin fight, okay, he got the job done, but it wasn't a great fight. The Helenius fight, he landed a knockout, but again, it wasn't a great fight. But the Otto Warland fight, it was a great fight. The Ngannou fight, it was a great fight. He's entertaining again, and he's getting the knockouts, which is the AJ that we all know and love, isn't it?
Jack Dutton says he's been financially secure for quite some time now. If he regains the title and he beats Fury in the next couple of years, maybe that would be a good time to go out. Punchy, couldn't care less. He was never great, but in fairness to him, he tried. Fair enough, Punchy. Guess he was punching above. Jack Dutton again comes in with double dip. I think Fury has brought more entertainment to boxing than AJ. Maybe in the recent years, but those formative first beginner years of Fury with that style he had beforehand, some of the excitement came from Fury being knocked down and getting back up, as opposed to Fury's style specifically and being entertaining in the ring. You had to enjoy, especially the Klitschko fight. Unless you're a real hardcore boxing fan who's really looking for those nuances and how technically great. I'm not taking away anything from what Fury did on that night. It's a boring fight. It is a boring fight, not one that you'd happily go watch. And you say to someone who's a boxing fan, come watch Fury versus Klitschko with me again, because that's going to get you into boxing. You'd much rather watch maybe Fury versus Wilder 1, 2, or 3 to pick one of those fights through. Ben Finesilver, good name. Live stream for this. Yes, we're here. Axel72, big up the Joshua Hart. Big up indeed, Joshua. You got a fan in here. Many more to come. This must be from your boxing fight there. You picked one up and he's come over to here. Joshua had a great career. He's still fighting. Ariel Bracamonte, maybe a future opponent for Joshua. Just kidding. I think he's well above that. Flexen been on the keto. No, it's not Danny Flexen. It's Joshua Hart. Remember the name. Cloud Strife. AJ can't beat Usyk. You can fight him 100 times and lose 100 times. Jumping back to you, Josh. This is something that's been said by Ben Davison and the team since Joshua has linked up with that team, that they're really confident that if they had the third fight with Usyk, that because of what they do, because of the countless bits of tape that they watch, they could come up with a game plan where Joshua does finally get a win over a long-time rival, Oleksandr Usyk. Do you feel that team can create that game plan that will defeat Usyk? I spoke to Shane McGuigan and he felt, look, regardless of what any team could come up with, Usyk's just got that style and he's got Joshua's number however many times they fight. But do you feel that this new team going forward with Ben Davis and Lee Wiley and that can manifest a win over Usyk in the future?
I think I agree with Shane McGuigan in the fact that you'd think Usyk has AJ's number, but I think we would see the closest fight yet, because something I noticed, Ben Davison has not just been saying he wants to help AJ beat Usyk since he's teamed up with him. There's interviews that go back 2-3 years ago where Ben Davison is there saying he feels like he could help AJ beat Usyk. It's no secret how good of a coach Ben Davison is. We can see the way, something we're going to get onto later, we can see the way how he's changed Jordan Gill in just one fight. Look at what he's done with Lee Wood. Look at what he's done with Fabio Wardley. Look at this. The list can go on and on and on. Look what he did with Tyson Fury. He brought Tyson Fury back from 400 pounds, looking like he's never going to fight again, to being this close to winning the world title with him. So it would be very interesting to see, and I'd be very up to see Usyk versus Joshua 3. But I still think Usyk is just that little bit too clever for AJ, because there's one thing being taught how to do it, but I think Usyk just naturally has it. He just naturally has that brain that can pick anyone apart. He'll stand in front of you for a couple of rounds and he'll download data about you, and then he'll capitalize on that. He'll find your weak spots and he'll exploit that massively. And I just don't think AJ has that brain about him. I'm not saying he's not a clever boxer, because he's definitely a much clever boxer now under Ben Davison than what he's ever been. But I do think Usyk has his number.
MMZS says, speaking of numbers, 3 times before he retires. DB Cooper 1. Good to see you in, DB Cooper 1. Newbie on the block. Hey, pop the kettle on for us, Josh, lad. 2 sugars. Splash of milk. Nice one, son. Joke, welcome to the game. They were saying the same thing about Frank Smith, Josh. Don't worry about that. Look what he went on to do. So if you make a few T's in your time, it's not the worst thing to do. Cameron Hopewell, Fury versus Double Vodka Red Bull isn't what would be good. I think he's parked them for now, especially with Usyk on the horizon. David Banks, AJ is a masterclass at his class. He's looking good recently. Bracamonte back with AJ might want to carry on fighting after another loss. Cloud Stripe, I don't want to hear people saying when they plan to retire, it's BS. Just announce when you're retired. It seems like recently a lot of fighters have kind of been retired and then stayed retired. So hopefully it's a trend that does continue. You don't want to see fighters come back for other reasons. A lot of people kind of point to Mike Tyson coming back to the ring because of financial issues and other reasons around that, maybe needing the money, which is not what you want to see from the sport. DB Cooper won again. Guess it's newsworthy because he's addressed it publicly, but we all knew he had 1 or 2 years left. World title and Fury is the only thing left, and the end game. Cameron again back in. One left is a 2-pinter. Is that you? I think you're getting some form of interesting comments here. And Bracamonte back with AJ will be smart getting out before Jalilov settles in. A lot of people earmarking Jalilov as the future, along with Moses Atama too. DB Cooper 1 throws in his fights that he wants to see in the ring. Parker also on a resurgence as well. The first fight was quite boring though. Fury and Usyk, and a rematch. I think that's what he's saying there. Jalilov would show AJ difference between a legitimate super heavyweight Olympic champion. Some more nice comments for you. I won't read them out here, but Dylan Tring has taken a liking to you, Josh. AJ versus Thomas Rusk. I don't know who Thomas Rusk is. Maybe you're referring to Thomas Hauser, potentially. BD, boxing needs AJ. He was the only one chasing undisputed. He made heavyweight boxing great again. While Wilder and Fury fighting nobodies and are protected by the WBC. Thoughts on AJ making an appearance at the Cali Pali? I don't know what the Cali Pali is. I think you mean Ali Pali, unless Cali Pali is somewhere else. I'm not sure Ali Pali is quite as big enough for AJ, but I do know that AJ being from Watford, whilst he's not a Watford fan like I am, we share that kind of same place of being born, myself and Joshua, although he doesn't support the team like I do. He does, however, have a long-standing roots within the community, and I think he said before that he would like to have a fight at Vicarage Road. So maybe his final fight would see him light up the stadium in a fight to bring the community together. So that might be something in the future, maybe not Ali Pali. Also, AJ has fought most of the sub-elite fighters to rebuild. He won't have the luxury of more Wallin Franklin level fights, agreed. He's now back at the elite level where he's been found wanting. Why is AJ refusing to fight Hrgovic, says Gary. Bit embarrassing that. Is Hrgovic too risky? Another AJ's easy last 4 fights. It's interesting. It doesn't depends who you speak to on Hrgovic, because a lot of people kind of see Hrgovic as the real deal and the real force at the top level. Maybe not, obviously not one of the highest or elite level fighters, but definitely a world class and or in that or worthy of that bracket. But other people I speak to really kind of see Hrgovic as a middling heavyweight and someone who's been maneuvered very well into a position where he'll eventually get found wanting. And if you look at it the way of how Zhang fought Hrgovic, and for a lot of people, including myself, I feel that Zhang nicked that fight against Hrgovic, and what Zhang has gone on to do, and where Zhang has been found wanting, both in his gas tank and in then the performances against, against Joe Parker. You can kind of look at it as maybe that's where Hrgovic's ceiling is, but it is an interesting point as to why AJ isn't taking the Hrgovic fight straight away, maybe leaving for Dubois to take that. Maybe it just kind of sets up the rather see less money in AJ Hrgovic next, albeit for a belt, but rather see more money in if Hrgovic is defeated by Dubois, and then it's Joshua sort of touching the next generation of heavyweights by fighting Dubois and maybe beating Dubois, if that was to be the case. So maybe there's some thinking around that. Cameron Hopewell, the guy with the buzz cut, looks really kind, actually, to be fair, mate. Really kind. You are a kind guy. Josh, I'll just share a little moment. There was a nice lady that came up to me the other day and said, "Oh, I see you've hired Josh Hart. He's a nice guy. He's really cute." And I said to her, "Well, we haven't hired him for his cuteness, but I'm sure he'll do well. I'll let him know. So I'm letting you know now. You've got a bit of a fan base going on with you." What else have we got here? DB Cooper, Hrgovic refuses to fight anyone whilst he's next in line for Usyk's titles as mandatory. Hence why he's been fighting the likes of Demori till Dubois came up. Nathan reports. What's he reporting? Thomas Rusk beats AJ, and I don't know who Rusk is. Maybe I'm missing something here. Thomas Rusk? No idea. Dubois is only fighting Hrgovic after Joshua refused to. Joshua waiting for another payday from AJ. Oh, I missed a bit here. I think I have here. 1 second. There's a lot of comments coming through, so I appreciate everyone coming in here. I'm going to have to move on because I can't see. There we go. After another 4 easy fights and plastic PR. There we go. Nope. I think I missed that. Lewis Hart, here we go. So I'm stumbling through this. There's a lot of comments to get through. Lewis Hart, Ayman, thoughts on heavyweight contender Buster Douglas? Was it his birthday the other day? Big up Buster. Ultra defensive hairline. Now they're turning on you, Josh. Jesus.
Wait,
maybe that's me.
Who said that?
Maybe it's me, Cameron Hopewell. Maybe he's talking about me having the ultra defensive hairline because I've put the cap on. So
I can't be having that, man. I've already got haters. I've been. What time is it? I've been here for 26 minutes, and I'm already getting stick. Brilliant.
Here we go. Theoretically, is AJ lost to Francis? How much of a spanner in the works would that be? Crazy. Like, that would have been a real moment where I know that there might have been some contention about me asking questions regarding retiring and things to heavyweights, but you'd have had to really seriously consider your career had you lost to Francis Ngannou, who, whilst putting on a good performance against Tyson Fury, it's a 2-fight novice heavyweight. So Joshua having another loss to that level of opposition, you'd give the credit to Francis Ngannou, but you really have to ask where AJ's career goes from there. The thing is, though, he's been able to manufacture the road back. So there always seems to be a road back for Joshua with these spanner in the works. So maybe there could have been another one. Danny Gilfillan, much appreciated for Danny Gilfillan for dropping in a £5 super chat. We read as much chats as we can. Never obliged to give a super chat, but you can do if you like to. And Danny has done so. Is Ayman jealous of the new young gun? Welcome, Josh. Real good for Danny to. I know that we banter a lot to roll out the red carpet for the new guy, Josh. Definitely not jealous of Joshua Hart, but looking to work with him in the future. Very much looking forward to it. Speaking of other reporters, though, Gary throwing a stray towards Lewis Hart. Well, more of a targeted one. Where's your boss, Eddie Hearn, mate? Don't know, mate. Spoken to him in months, Gary. We'll leave the Lewis Hart chat there for now as we move forward. We've got to move on to the next topic as well, too. So apologies for a lot of you guys who have put a lot of comments in the chat as we're going to have to roll through the next one because we're already halfway through the episode. So just coming in here, we all know AJ is really retiring because he can't stand the almighty Dev Sani interviewing anymore. If we see AJ versus Dylan, shows failing multiple tests in your career earns you massive paydays. Danny Gilfillan just waited £5. It was hard earned money. Fair enough, might be the case, but it feels like from what I checked in the chat, we'll keep it open for now that Fury is storming into an early lead when it comes to the poll as to who people want to see Joshua fight. But that trilogy might be one in the future. And when it comes to that trilogy of Oleksandr Usyk in the future, I spoke to Oleksandr Usyk, got a chance to speak to him. Danny Flexen gave me the hot tag in doing the interview with Usyk from his training camp. And I posed to him, I read an interview that Joshua had done with the BBC, and he said that he kind of took some time to look at what he did when he took the microphone from Oleksandr Usyk, or at least used that time to speak to the audience after his defeat the second time around to Oleksandr Usyk. And he felt that that wasn't the right time to do that. And he offered an apology via Vladimir Klitschko to Oleksandr Usyk to say, look, I'm sorry for doing that, and kind of owned up and took responsibility for that moment. I spoke to Oleksandr Usyk and I said, is that an apology you're looking for? And is that an apology you accepted? And Usyk, to be fair, as magnanimous and as just a real stand-up kind of guy is Oleksandr. Secondly, he said he wasn't really looking for an apology. And then secondly, when it came to actually thinking back on that moment, he said that he had no bad feelings about Anthony Joshua. He respected him as a boxer, as the Olympic champion he was, as the two-time champion he was, and he just understood that there was an emotion coming from Joshua, and he had no issues with him and that moment. So that was really kind of nice to see Usyk not harboring anything from that time. What did you, before I come to you, Josh, actually, as well, I asked Eddie Hearn as well. I said to him, what do you think about Joshua offering that apology, and do you think he needed to? And Eddie just kind of said, look, I don't really think he needed to, but Joshua's kind of just that stand-up guy that if he felt he needed to, he'd do it and he'd give it eventually, and that's what he has done. But Joshua, coming back to you, throwing this to you, as I watch a video of Joshua throwing high kicks, might be something you want to check out as well. What do you think about that apology given and that moment where Joshua did grab the mic from Usyk?
I think looking at the apology, I think it shows the type of guy AJ is, because it's been nearly 2 years since that, and he still felt the need that he had to apologise. I think in the moment, when I looked on social media during that moment, he was getting so much stick. People were saying his head's gone, this, that, the other. And I think in the moment, it was just AJ realising, obviously, I think AJ had been on top of the world for, a couple years at this point, and he just lost the rematch. Obviously, this was his second time going into a rematch where he was trying to reclaim the belts. With the first one obviously being Andy Ruiz, but he beat Andy Ruiz and we reclaimed those belts. And I think no one's going to go into a fight and thinking what's going to happen when they lose. I think AJ's realised that he's lost, not had his hand raised. I think he's just, in his head, he's just like, he's crumbling. And I think you could see that in the post-fight press conference when, he wasn't in the ring. And you could see how gutted he was. He had tears rolling down his face. I think all it was in the end was just a massive outburst of emotion, especially with how much pressure would have been put on him by the British fans, the press. The whole story of going into the rematch was that AJ needed to knock him out. AJ needed to get these belts back. And when he realised that he hadn't done that and that these belts were fully gone now, there was no third chance of getting the belts back. Or no instant rematch anyway, no immediate rematch, like what he's had to do here. He's had to work his way back. I think it was just a massive outburst of emotion and almost the pressure coming off his shoulders, because I'm sure while the next day he's probably going to have woken up feeling a little bit gutted that he's not got the belts. All that pressure that was put on him going into the rematch was probably gone. I'm not sure he probably felt the happiness of the pressure being gone straight away, because ultimately it's not like the pressure was gone because he reclaimed the belts. He got defeated that night. But I think him apologising, a year and a half, 2 years on, it really shows the type of guy AJ is. I think he's someone who's not let the fame, the money, the followers, he's not let that get to him. He's still I think he's found that same headspace that he was in at the start when he first started boxing. So he wants to learn again. And I think him apologising, like I said already, it shows the type of guy that he is. It shows that he's a true, he's a human. He looks back and he regrets these things, and it's good that he's tried to reach out to Usyk and say, I'm sorry for that. It was disrespectful.
What my kind of take was on that whole situation was it was just so out of character for what Joshua usually does when it comes to him, and he's just so kind of. I think the tag that's been labelled towards him, and it's again somewhat unfair, but you get it when you're in that high profile spotlight. You are media trained, so you give your answers in that sort of way, and everyone's kind of wanted to scratch away at that and want to see what Joshua's kind of true kind of persona is. When he's on camera, when those spotlights burn the brightest, and we've never really seen that apart from those moments. And that was one specific moment where we saw Joshua outside of kind of that media trained shell, I guess. And for me, I didn't feel like there was something particularly he needed to apologize for. It was particularly disrespectful. It was kind of just good to see Joshua be himself. And this is one of those things where he's damned where if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. Because I remember the same sort of people who were when Joshua lost to Ruiz on that stunning night, where he wasn't meant to by just a massive underdog Andy Ruiz. The same sort of people were criticizing AJ for handing the belts over to him, not kind of being pissed off or peed off in the post fight, and just being kind of, congratulating Ruiz for his win, and not kind of being pissed that he'd lost the belts. But then fast forward to Usyk in the highest or the most pressurized night of his career, and he gives you that moment where he's pissed off. You can see the raw emotion. You've got that. And people want to criticize on that point as well, too. So I just feel like AJ in these moments can't ever win. But for me, it was nice to see him, one, just be himself. And then two as well, like the other side of it, think about it and maybe offer that apology if he felt that he needed to do that and have that kind of bit of growth as well. So I really kind of respect that idea from Joshua and the way he carries himself inside and outside the ring. at least in the last few years as well, too. Moving forward as well as time rapidly moves out, judging and going by the Oleksandr Usyk interview I did, he had some funny little one-liners, none more so than when it's put to him about some of the comments that Tyson Fury made about being called a bunny rabbit and a cruiserweight, although called a cruiserweight is no disrespect. Maybe it is when you're in the heavyweight division, but because of Usyk's accomplishments, being undisputed at cruiserweight, it's not that bad of a comment to make from Fury. But what did Oleksandr Usyk make of that? And he called himself, well, he said, the streets know me as Oleksandr the Evil, which is a funny little comment from Oleksandr Usyk. But he looks ready. A lot of people commenting about maybe putting on some weight Usyk has for the Fury fight in the future. The main thing that I thought I asked him, I knew I wasn't going to get a straight answer out of him, but is the point of contention regarding the cut to Fury's eye as to whether that would be something that Oleksandr, being the accurate puncher that he is and the real kind of fast, hurtful puncher, spiteful puncher that he is, would he be looking to target what he feels is maybe a weakness from Fury? And he naturally didn't give anything away. But for you, Josh, the cut, do you feel that it's a weakness enough to sway the fight in Usyk's favor against Tyson Fury?
That's a good question. That is a very good question. I don't think it's enough to sway the fight. I think this is such an elite level fight that a cut isn't going to be significant enough. The cut will only become significant in the fight is if it gets opened. But if the cut doesn't open, it's not significant. And if it doesn't open anywhere near as bad as what it has been seen to, I don't think it will be a massive factor. However, Usyk might not say it, but I think in his head, and I'm not in Usyk's head, this is just what I'd be thinking if I was him, that spot has opened multiple times before. It's not the first time where that cut has opened. And I feel Usyk is accurate enough and smart enough to find openings to target that area, but without making it obvious. Because there's one thing targeting it, but you don't want to do it so it's obvious. I think Usyk's smart enough to just hit it a couple times and keep just like hitting that same spot. And I think eventually he could catch it, he could open it. And I think once we get to that stage, I think that's where it becomes a massive problem, because it's not a nice place to get a cut. It's right next to the eye. The blood will be going into the eye. And I just feel Usyk's got that smartness and he's got that accuracy to really, really find the openings to get the cut.
Just keeping you with you, Josh, because I feel like I've spoken quite a lot. The other thing that I asked Usyk was whether he was, having seen the images of Fury looking in great shape, whether it reassures him that Fury will be at the fight and there won't be another pullout from his point of view, from the Fury side, for that undisputed, now rearranged bout for the third time, I think it is. Do you feel confident that either fighter won't be pulling out and that we do get that undisputed heavyweight title fight?
Yes, I'm extremely confident that I think the fight comes around this time. I think it shows how much they want to make this fight when 24 hours after the fight was postponed, Usyk, Fury, Turkey, they're all on a Zoom call with Ariel Helwani and they're announcing a new date straight away. And I think that shows just how much they really want to actually make this fight, especially with the punishment. I can't remember how much it is. Turkey said that whoever pulls out gets fined, but a very large sum of money will be leaving someone's bank account if they pull out. I think you can tell by the shape as well of Fury. I don't think we've ever seen Fury in such good shape. And I've got full confidence that this fight goes ahead on May 18th.
Who do you favour right now?
For me, see, I'm like everyone else. My head keeps swaying, but recently I've just been favouring Usyk. I think there's the saying that you're only as good as your last performance. And obviously I know neither Fury or Usyk had great performances last time out. But I just think Usyk is so smart and such a good boxer. I feel like he just has too much for Fury. I think he'll know how to deal with him. Don't get me wrong, it's not easy to prepare for Fury, but at the same time, it's not easy to prepare for Usyk. But I think they're just two such elite level heavyweights that it'll create. I don't think it'll be an exciting fight by any means. I think it's one of those fights that'll be a real chess match. But I think Usyk has enough to get it on point, or even, I reckon, a late stoppage.
I see the Fury book in the background. You read that one? Was it a good read?
Yeah, the Fury books are the best one. Is his first one. His first book's definitely the best one. His other two aren't as good because I think one of them goes into about his like diet and his shape and everything. And I'm not trying to get built like Tyson Fury. I've not got the genes or genetics for that. So, but the books are quite good. The first book's really good when it talks about his career and his story and when he hit the depression and how he made it back out the other end as well. They are very good books though. I'd recommend if you've not read them.
Recommend going back into the chat too, reading some of the comments. Usyk staying quiet and letting AJ dig his own hole did maximum damage from that situation. That's Errol Bracamonte's point of view. Danny Giffen, harsh DB Cooper, must be some back and forth there. Although maybe they're the same person, as is the whispers going around in the industry. Unsure, but Threshold is different because he doesn't hold a UK license. I think that's regards to something else. Thomas Rusk is a Nottingham-based fighter. Be sure to check him out. Gary, if Fury gets permission and was cleared by White, got cleared by who? Good question to ask. Good question to pose to White in the future. AJ was pissed off his man to beat him in a rematch. He never should have been had to sign. You want some? I'll give it you. Classic Wellstone Raider. Maybe that's where DB Cooper's from. Ayman Khan will take care of you. I have actually sparred Danny Griffin in the past before, and I pinged him about the place, and I had to go easy on him at some points. You know, you don't really want to hurt anyone who's main point of getting financial income is speaking and interviewing. So I had to sometimes pull it back a little bit. As Josh Hart knows, he has to do that as well with his opponents. And maybe in the future, Josh could fight Danny and the winner could get me, and we'll do some sort of tournament in that sort of way as well. And Lewis, if he doesn't duck fights as well too, or spars, can get in the mix too. But going back to the real fighters, Gary says, AJ should have been celebrating. He got 2 paydays and a rematch clause from mandatory, which is BS. I thought AJ's outburst was normal. That's what you want in sport, says DB Cooper 1. Shows you want it means and pure real emotions. Shows you what it means and pure real emotion. Reading these wrong today. It wasn't disrespectful. If anything, it sang Usyk's praises. AJ had won almost every fight before, and none of his opponents reacted the same way. He retired. Vlad, another champ who never threw toys out the pram. His team didn't protect him that day. That's another bit of a point that people make as well. Kim 10 Africa, Kim 10 of Africa, or Kim 1 of Africa, I'm reading that right, has made that point here. Going back to Bracamonte, it was disrespectful. AJ thought we cared more about his struggle, the struggles he's been through, rather than Usyk's, who won the fight with his country at war. Be interesting to see where the Usyk PR goes after Tyson Fury beats him. Usyk is living high off the Fury hate at the moment. Exciting times ahead. Big up Josh Hart, another good friend of yours has jumped in the chat. Daniel Lacey says, big up Josh Hart. So you got some fans here. And DB Cooper 1 says, Josh, mate, burn that Eddie Hearn book if you want to be taken serious as a reporter. Yeah, well, there's some advice for you. It's up to you if you want to take that or not. But yeah, moving forward to our last point of contention before we move on, and that is to this weekend's action. I will be in Manchester this weekend. Manchester, a city that I'm very much fond of, having worked there before I got into boxing. So always great to see nights still happening in Manchester, especially off the back of when we used to have those big nights in Manchester. It feels like Manchester's kind of died down and waiting for those big stars. And Zelfa Barrett, although not a top star as he will want to be at this point in time, is someone who's been carrying some form of the Manchester lineage through in recent years. And he's in against Jordan Gill, it's a tougher fight than maybe you would have thought it would be. Roll it back a couple of years or so, or at least a couple of fights or so. Maybe you might have had Zelfa as the strong favorite going to this one as opposed to Jordan Gill. But Jordan, since moving his camp and basing it with Ben Davison himself, has been on a resurgence of his own, where he's really found his punch power, similar in the vein of Lee Wood, where they've kind of taken away the boxing skills and had him grounded a bit more and making sure that he can kind of land those big punches, the big punches that got him through fights beforehand when he was really hurt. They've just harnessed that and tried to use that as one of his main weapons. And I was there for the Mick Conlan fight. You had to dig in deep, and he did dig in deep to get the finish in that fight too. So potentially another big win here for Jordan Gill if he can manifest that moment. Do you think he will, Josh? What do you think about the fight?
I think it's a really, really tough fight to call because Zelfa Barrett has only recently he's only lost at the top level. I know he's got a loss earlier on in his career, but he's bounced back from that. And in the loss that he did have at world level, he was winning that fight for me. I thought he was up on the cards. It's just a shame that he got caught. But when I last interviewed him back at the launch presser, he mentioned how much he's learned from that and how he's probably learned more from that one fight than any of the other fights that he's had in his career. As for Jordan Gill, I think obviously no one knew what he'd been through until after the fight, and no one would have thought that he'd been through what he'd been through based on that performance. Because that was a performance against Michael Conlan, where it looks like you've been training a long, long time for that. Where about 5 months prior, he was in a field ready to say goodbye. He didn't want to live anymore. And he's bounced back a great performance and winning against Michael Conlan on away soil. And he's back to away soil again this weekend. And again, something I mentioned with him was, do you prefer being on the away soil because there's almost no pressure on him? For Michael Conlan, it was his people. The people were there to see him. There's that expectation that he needs to perform. The same's going for Zelfa Barrett this weekend. This is his first time headlining in Manchester. And it's something that's so big to him, especially with him being from the city. A lot of young boxers in Manchester probably dream of headlining at the AO Arena or formerly known as the MEN Arena. A lot of them would have grown up thinking of that. And Zelfa Barrett now has that this weekend. For me, it's such a tough fight to call. It's a really, really tough fight to call. But I'm leaning more towards Zelfa just based on the experience that he's had with boxing at such a high level, and what he learned in that world title fight, and in his other performances, he's looked great. As of late, obviously, I know last time we saw him out was just an 8-rounder in Ireland on the Katie Taylor undercard, which a lot of people probably forgot about. But just little bits like that, he's kept active, and I think he knows just how big this is this weekend. And I just slightly tip Zelfa, but I would not be shocked at all if Jordan Gill upsets the apple cart again, upsets the home fighter and the home crowd. But it's a really, really strong main event for me.
Yeah, I mean, both these fighters have kind of had similar sort of paths where they've kind of stuttered on the way to the top, although Zelfa Barrett has had that opportunity higher up the chain when it comes to the world title fight, whereas Jordan Gill hasn't had that opportunity. And it feels like, to me, quite a bit of a crossroads. Whilst there will be, life left in both fighters, it just matters how much as to each fighter wants to continue back on their path if they end up being on the end of defeat this weekend. So not quite a crossroads fight here for either fighter, but definitely a bit of a route back for whoever finds himself on the losing end of the fight. For me, one of the main points of contention, specifically for Jordan Gill, really, is where he kind of is when it comes to being up at this weight now, because he's moved from featherweight to super feather. Maybe part of the problems of Jordan Gill's performances was getting down to that featherweight limit. Now he's up at super feather, where sure, he fought Michael Conlan, but Michael Conlan wasn't really like a big super featherweight himself. So it's not really like quite the cracking, fully fledged super featherweight debut for Jordan Gill against Conlan. So we want to find out whether, if in any sort of form, despite Michael Conlan's technical abilities and abilities as an actual boxer, taking nothing away from him, but at that super featherweight limit, was he the real kind of introduction for Jordan to say that, look, he belongs here, and looking forward to his prospects at the top level of the chain at super feather, whether he can contend at the level 2 even with the trainer change. And Zelfa is probably that test to a degree, because Zelfa is a fully fledged super featherweight. He might have his own problems as well to getting that to the weight himself, and that might play a part in the fight as well too. We'll see if there's any problems there for Zelfa Barrett on his side. But Zelfa is someone who maybe not as accomplished as a boxer as Jordan Gill is, but does carry a big left hook as well too, which has been a factor in fights as he's moved forward up the chain himself too. I remember against Eric Donovan, it was the shots that were eventually kind of caused the end for Zelfa Barrett, for Eric Donovan, and got the win for Zelfa as he kind of used it to just chip down and chip away at his opponent there on that night. Maybe he might look to utilize that and chip away at Jordan Gill if he can find him in the ring. Jordan still, whilst looking to stand on his punches a lot more, still has those fleet feet you'd think, and the boxing skill to be able to outmaneuver Zelfa Barrett. So I think this might be one of those fights where I think Jordan Gill will probably be looking to get this win on points. A very cautious type of fight, not really looking to trade too much because of the power that Zelfa does have, and as well for the same with Jordan Gill, but whether that carries up to that weight, we'll have to wait and see. So very much an intriguing fight for the Manchester crowd, which I'll be looking forward to as well. Interesting to hear from the opposite ends of the trainers as well too, as to how they're looking to judge this fight and what their potential game plans might be. Josh, jumping back to yourself, are there any fights on the undercard that particularly take your fancy, just to run those through quickly? Your Ellie Scotney against Lafebre, Rhiannon Dixon against Carbajal, that's for the WBO World Lightweight title. Michael Gomez Jr. versus Kane Baker. We were supposed to see Jordan Flynn versus Cameron Vong, weren't we, on this card? I think it was. That's now not the case. Jack Turner is exciting as well too. Returns. Jimmy Sains as well, another one from the Tony Sims gym. William Crawler, carrying on the lineage of Crawler Lane. Brandon Scott, another highly touted talent, and Stephen Clark. Anyone else take your eye on this card?
I mean, the one that I think everyone was excited for was Cameron Vong versus Jordan Flynn. But obviously that's not happened now due to an injury on the Cameron Vong end. I'm really excited for the Rhiannon Dixon fight, especially looking at her journey. You know, it's not been long since she won the Commonwealth title and the European title. And with the way things have played out in her division, she's got the shot of a lifetime at the WBO World title this weekend. Ellie Scotney's in a really intriguing unification as well. It's a clash of two undefeated fighters. That's going to be a really interesting fight. But I think I'm very excited for Michael Gomez versus Kane Baker. Kane Baker's always guaranteed entertainment every single time he's in the ring. Obviously, he's had two really good fights with Jordan Flynn, who's also on the card still. Matchroom are looking at getting an opponent for him. But I'm very excited to see the return of Brandon Scott. He brings the excitement and the energy on fight week. We've seen it on the AJ Hellenius fight week when he turned up as Spider-Man and then made some jokes that didn't go down so well at the press conference. But at the end of the day, he shows his character. He's a great fighter in the ring. And this is supposedly the first time we'll see him with two hands. He's been suffering with a hand injury. And which he said to the point of where he almost had to retire, where there were specialists saying that, you know, he won't be able to fight with how bad his hand was, but he's had it all fixed. He's good to go. And I'm very, very excited to see how not just this fight plays out, but how Matchroom move him. Obviously, I know he's a young lad and everything. I'm just very excited to see his journey, see how he gets on this weekend, and then see how active Matchroom wants to keep him for the rest of 2024.
Let's jump back into the comments as well. Ryan Deards, another fan of yours, Josh. We've got a few of them in here. Says, yes, Josh, bro. Is that your bro?
What I can't see the chat on my laptop. What's the name?
Ryan Deards. Deards.
Yeah, I started talking to Ryan right when I first started doing this. He's seen the whole journey. Yeah, big up yourself, Ryan, if you're still in the chat.
I think he is in there. I think he's bigging you back up too. Likely off topic, Josh looks like a good laugh. He is indeed a good laugh, likely off topic. I don't know who you are, likely off topic, or maybe I do. Can Dylan fight in the UK or Saudi? How likely are we to see AJ versus White 3? Dylan can't fight on BBFC shows. I think I remember him kind of being confident that he could, or at least there was no issues. I think he's been fighting on a foreign license, a Portuguese license, which I think the Dylan's team, from what I can remember, didn't see much of an issue, but that still is up in the air as far as I'm aware as to whether he can. I think those Saudi shows are very much licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control, so they don't want to upset the apple cart from their side. They'd want their fights to be sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control, from what I understand. So if someone's fight future is somewhat not sorted, the best way to put it out, I think they'll probably end up avoiding doing or having them feature on their cards as of right now, until that's all sorted and until that's all on the straight and narrow. So for right now, from what I understand, I don't think we'll likely see Dylan White, and he's not been rumored or mooted to be in the picture right now. So that's a situation that will probably clear up as the weeks go by. But as far as I understand it, we're not likely to see Dylan White feature on these cards. Ryan coming back and saying Ruiz 100% needs his chance back on the scene. Either Ruiz versus Django, Ruiz versus Wilder, or either Joyce. Well, this is the frustrating thing with Andy Ruiz is he just needs a fight. For so long, we've been looking for Ruiz to come back in the ring, and we see posts of him being in fantastic shape. I think he did have an injury, and whilst I'm talking, I'm just going to search up Ruiz's Instagram just to see if I can find an update on him. But there's been no updates as to him being in the picture at all, as to any sort of fights. It was supposed to be Wilder and Ruiz as well for some sort of eliminator in the past, if I remember correctly, but that never materialized. What's the situation with the PBC is that's now that the PBC are up in the air and they've now landed on Amazon and are doing fight nights now. Ruiz hasn't been at the top of the chain to come back and have a fight, and I don't think the PBC will, whilst they've let go of some, it seems, from their contracts as they've moved over from networks, I don't think they'll be wanting to let go of a heavyweight, Mexican heavyweight, former unified world champion heavyweight as well, too, as easy as maybe as they've let go other fighters. So interesting situation to develop with Andy Ruiz, but just don't know where he stands right now. And he's definitely not in the picture because he's not fighting at the moment. Real frustrating time for him. And as a boxing fan, you want to see him get those opportunities. Joe Parker is a rematch you probably want to see again. Him against Dylan White is probably something you want to see him again and again too. That Wilder fight was an interesting one that you want to see in the future, but we don't seem to be getting anything right now from the Andy Ruiz perspective, which is a shame. Manchester used to be great till all suddenly started moving here. Tommy Fury, Molly May influencer effect making the exit move up north. Best arena for boxing. Zelfa also lost to Kiko. I don't think Pat Barrett is a world-class trainer. Both Zelfa and Linda don't look world-class. Zelfa Gill is decent, but the undercard's kind of weak, in my opinion. Everything DAZN is next gen or just a level above these days. It takes too many British fights to American hotels at 4 a.m. I was there at one of them for the Conor Ben fight. I think like this is probably right in the sense of saying that this is probably just above or maybe a bit above that next gen sort of level, especially with some of the names. I don't think you can call Ellie Scotney next gen, although the WBC did try to call Ellie Scotney next gen, didn't they, in one of their next gen fighters of the year awards, I think, if I remember that correctly. But I think it's a level above being that. But then when you look below the undercard, there are definitely kind of those young names coming through. Renan Dixon is sort of next gen in a sense, but if you're fighting for a world title now, you move yourself out of that picture, don't you? So I don't think you can call her next gen either. But everyone else under that level, under that fight, is very much a next gen card, which I'm not against in any sort of way. There's a time and a place for fights of that level, and exposing them to the bigger fights as well too. But you've got to get that mix right, and fans will respond by their viewership if Matchroom Boxing have got that right. Is there a double standard with Eddie piling on Boxer for pulling Azim out of the fight, and Conor Ben, who's ranked number 3 WBC, calling out retired smaller fighters? Maybe something that I'll be putting into Eddie Hearn this week in some form, potentially. We'll see. We'll have to hold on discussing that as we're running out of time, Ariel. So I'm going to move through. Lewis Hart coming in. Said he'd been on a Texan license for a while, not Portuguese. He's confirmed it Texan. There you go. Andy Ruiz is a prime example of someone who got a ton of dough and overestimated his worth. I think he's also fell victim to having a lot of cousins and family members coming out of the woodwork when he was at his highest of highs, earning all that money in the rematch as well too. He maneuvered, didn't he, to get more money, otherwise he wouldn't take the rematch, although I don't think he had much play, but I think they were happy to facilitate him getting a bit more money so they could just get him in the ring because his head wasn't in the ring. He was happy to be partying and enjoying his riches off of the back of the victory against Anthony Joshua. So I think he kind of fall victim to that, and maybe not having the best of people around him at the time to kind of navigate him away from that. So Ruiz, you kind of can question motivation to a sense when you've had that big night that might be the biggest night of your career, and what's kind of next for you. Ruiz is waiting for his divorce to go through before he fights again. So the game is the game. Makes sense. I think that's about it. So if we can, Vinny, in the background, could you end the poll so we can get the results from the poll as to who people want to see Joshua fight in this final 2 years of his career, if it's to be in these final 6 fights, if it's to be, if you can get those up for me. Vinny, and we can read those out and get our reactions to that as we look to close out the show. As Vinny populates that, here we go with a whopping Fury leading it at 81%. It's Fury, then other is 8%, then Usyk is 5%, then Ruiz is 5%. Josh, coming to you, Fury being that whopping victory at 81%. You surprised by that at all?
Not at all. Not at all am I surprised by that. Obviously, I said the same thing earlier. I think the one fight we want to see is Fury versus AJ. I don't think there's really any fights that come close to that level. If we were to look at numbers, ticket sales, pay-per-view sales, I don't think there's any fight that really comes close other than Fury versus AJ. So I'm not shocked by the 81%.
Fair enough. I'm not shocked either. I can imagine that people want to see that all-British clash. It's just whether we see that all-British clash in Britain. Most likely that fight might find its way over to Saudi Arabia in some form if we do get there anyway. But yeah, that's about it to wrap up this week's edition of Seconds Out Live. As is customary, Josh, we'll leave the final word with you, or final sentences, or final few words with yourself. But before, and I'll give you some time and breathing space to think of those final words, I'd just like to thank everyone in the chat who's commented, who's coming in weekly as well, too, who's left a like, who's subscribed, who's commented, who's just kind of given the contributions to us and the Seconds Out Live, and bigged up Josh in this new venture with Seconds Out. So much appreciated. I'll be here in the week as well in Manchester covering the Gill versus Barrett card. We've got Josh Green covering as well too. I believe he's there for the Wasserman week or Wasserman events that are happening this week as well. So we have a lot of boxing content coming your way. Special thanks as well to, as Danny Gilfillan sort of puts in a half complaint, maybe retracting his super chat, for the super chat from Danny Gilfillan, always listening in. So very much appreciated for that. But we leave the final word with you, Josh. What would you like to say to round out this week's episode of Seconds Out Live?
I'd like to say, first of all, thank you everyone for joining. This has been something a bit new for me. Not going to lie, I was a little bit nervous beforehand, but I've enjoyed it. I had a good time. Big up everyone who's bigged me up in the chat as well. And hopefully I'll be back next week. If not, then hopefully I'll be back sometime soon.